idea was this?
Hello everyone, my name is J-Bob, and today we're going to be looking at Josie and the Pussycats.
Josie and the Pussycats, long tails and ears behind.
Originally it was a cartoon that aired from 1970 to 1972. Aired on CBS, and basically it was a version of Scooby-Doo, but instead of having a Great Dane, they had a girl band. Shows consisted of strange adventures, spy capers, and mysteries. The show would typically begin or end with a musical number, or sometimes both. And as the name suggests, they had a pussycat theme for their costumes. For some, that may have been a little bit more provocative, especially for parents that didn't want their kids to see that much skin. But considering standards then versus today now, where what constitutes a PG-13 is either flashing a pair of headlights on the screen or using a piece of Deadpool's daily vocabulary, take your pick. In any case, it was generally family-friendly, and unless you were Amish and read the comics, then you were probably fine. However, now about 30 years later, now we get this. Josie and the Pussycats, the movie.
Thank you, guys. Real nice. Thanks for coming out.
There's tons of boobs, backsides, and Tara Reid doing what she's known best for, being a ditzy bimbo, but in a cute and lovable way, while trying to pass off a bandana for a top for most of the movie. I mean, I feel bad for people who get stuck in that role and just can't get away from it, like Daniel Radcliffe. The first movie that I saw with him outside of Harry Potter was called The Woman in Black, and what I remember most about that movie was basically he was wandering into a room with a hatchet and a lantern, and somebody in the audience screamed out, "Where's your wand, Harry?" or "Use Lumos," and basically the entire theater erupted in laughter. So I guess what I'm trying to say is if Tara Reid is cool with her lot in movie life, then more power to her. Anyway,
If I could go back in time, I'd want to meet Snoopy.
there are three main characters, Josie, Melody, and Valerie, each mirroring their cartoon counterparts quite well. The other supporting characters, aside from Sebastian the cat, are also present, mainly Alan, Alex, and Alexandra. The girls largely work together to thwart the movie's villain, and its implied normal life resumes, with the added bonus of the girls gaining the stardom they've been seeking. Valerie got upgraded from playing the tambourines to a bass, which makes a lot more sense since they're in a punk rock band now. Lastly, deciding not to bring the witch/supernatural aspects from the comic for the movie was a good call, because, well...
Well, first of all, I don't understand what.
Gosh, that's fascinating.
I would say that if they had just renamed this to something else and tried to make it its own movie, that would have been better. But there are several instances of fourth wall breaking that specifically point out the source material. Mainly, Wyatt mentioning the cartoon and the comic book the girls come from, specifically that the show name isn't just the Pussycats, but Josie and the Pussycats. Alexandra gets asked why she's there, and her answer is simply because I was in the comics. Because aside from that, she really doesn't cause much mischief or try to take over the name Alexandra's Cool Time Cats, which would have made her the star of the film. I'm pretty sure there was a slight hint at this when Alexandra suggested maybe she take the role of the lead guitarist, but Wyatt simply scoffs and dismisses it rather quickly. Alan, Josie's roadie/crew member/love interest, eventually does get the girl in the end of the movie, but he feels like he was shoved into the movie, just for the sake of appeasing those who knew who he is. He's much more helpful in the comics and in the original cartoon. Here they joke about the fact that he doesn't even know how he convinced them to get him to go along to Mega Records with the rest of the group. So there's that. He then disappears for the next 20 to 30 minutes before showing back up because it's high time Josie and he hang out. They discuss a show that he has on his own, which Josie misses because of Wyatt's shenanigans, and then at the end of the movie, he decides to go to the big show and crowd surfs up to the stage for a love confession and big kiss. It's not the worst thing in the world since he's a supporting character in the show and the comics, but if you're gonna include him, let him do his thing, instead of making him feel like he's just there by accident. Especially when you point out that Alexandra's only there because of the source material, and virtually no other reason, unless you count her possibly hooking up with Les from De Jure at the very end of the movie, which she was somewhat in favor of, but due to various plot elements, that attraction seems to have faded significantly. Next, Fiona's evil plot consists of injecting subliminal messages into the number one band in the country's music, which also is how they become number one to begin with, voiced by Mr. Moviefone. Those that get too nosy for their own good usually end up in some horrific death, like plane crashes, drug overdoses, or the rest of the 27 Club. So it just goes to show that the entire music industry is basically a very poorly disguised monopoly and mafia combined all in one, since Fiona's the one pulling all the strings. It gets worse because she gets various world governments to agree to let it happen, since it's good for the economy. And how they explain that is basically they brainwash the entire youth of America, who survive off of babysitting and minimum wage, to spend all their money on the latest fashion trends, fast food, and whatever was cool in the late 90s, early 2000s. Also encouraging a little bit of underage drinking, because if you're going to be evil, go evil all the way. This ultimately blows up in her face because Josie tricks Fiona into breaking the Brainwasher 8000, revealing the ultimate message of evil. Fiona is the shiznit. What? Yes, she was only playing with the entire economy of the USA because she wanted to be popular.
Becoming popular. Lar.
This gets resolved by Agent Kelly showing up and arresting Fiona and Wyatt, likely because they ran out of time and budget, probably by getting that 20 to 30 second cameo by Eugene Levy, which thankfully also didn't include Jason Biggs.
Well, we'll just tell your mother that we ate it all.
Why do you even bother doing impressions? You're not funny.
De jure, the band from the very beginning of the movie gets axed pretty early on, likely because they were super annoying, and they're presumed dead for the rest of the movie. They introduce an odd, shadowy figure who shows up a couple of times and is later revealed to be Les from De jure, the main singer. It's odd because he's running around in the shadows quite stealthily, but then when he shows up, he's wearing a neck brace and using a cane. And the rest of the band is in full body casts. Now, the actual reason that they're in full body casts is quite funny, because they're presumed dead because the plane crashed, but actually turns out that they didn't crash the plane. The plane was quite easy to land, according to Les. The reason they were drastically injured was because they made the unfortunate mistake of landing in the middle of a Metallica concert, likely disrupting a mosh pit and spurning the ire of both the band and the concert goers. Because, as everyone knows, if you're in a boy band and you happen to fumble into a metalhead group, they're going to throttle you half to death. Except for the main singer, because his face was just too pretty to wreck, I guess. Moving on. There's this scene where Josie and the girls start to realize this sudden rise to stardom is highly suspicious when these three girls, who were diehard De jure fans, show up at their hotel door and do this. Yeah, this goes on for about 30 seconds, bouncing back and forth between the diehard fans and the band. And I mean, I understand to a certain point, probably shouldn't be making fun of people like this, but it's uncomfortable for everyone involved. But it could have been a lot worse. Like with the Tony Stark mega fan that showed up in Iron Man 3, copying his look and getting that tattoo of RDJ's face. That didn't sit well with people, and for good reason. The entire reason these people are as rich and successful as they are is because we go pay to see the movies that they're in. Calling people out for being unable to contain their emotions for a moment may feel good, but it puts a bad taste in the general public's mouth. Of course, I'm not talking about the fans that shove people out of the way so they can get their 30 seconds of fame with the celebrity of choice. You know, the whole golden rule thing.
Whoever has the gold makes the rules.
No, the other one. Treat people the way you want to be treated. Lastly, after Fiona's world comes crashing down because taking over the minds of the world with cat ear headphones didn't pan out as expected, everyone has a collective aha moment, with Alex dropping the moral of the movie on us, that everyone should be happy with who they are and stop trying to be someone that they're not. That happens as Fiona and Wyatt reveal who they really are, old schoolmates that became reasonably successful and overcame their physical limitations, but since the gig is up, they've no longer got a reason to hide it from the world, or themselves. However, Alex takes it just a step too far after the dust settles between Agent Kelly, Lisping Lisa, and Whitehead Wally by looking like he wandered in off the set of All the Small Things music video, encouraging the girls to go up and play their big number. This doesn't really add anything to the movie, aside from being a reference to the 1999 music video I just mentioned. So, if you watch that and were fine with it, this scene didn't shock you at all. In fact, if you like these kind of movie references, there's tons of them littered throughout the entire movie, so if you want to go hunt them down, More power to you. My issue is that they do this in spite of acknowledging the source material a few times throughout the movie. It was geared to kids and teens and generally family friendly. This, as you can tell from the cover art, creative liberties were taken to make it more appealing to target the audience of today. Lots of cleavage and convenient censorship, so if that's all you want, then you'll be entertained for roughly 90 minutes.
Well, what are you waiting for?
I don't know. Something amazing, I guess.
Me too, kid.
Once the girls arrive at Mega Records and get ready to finally record some music for Wyatt, they notice an odd-looking soundboard with very few buttons and knobs, which Wyatt dismisses very quickly as simply very important but not to touch it. They hear themselves played back through it and suddenly crave burgers and clothes, which they find strange but dismiss just as quickly as Wyatt told them to forget about the odd device. Later, after Josie got affected by the brainwashing, she goes back to the studio and tries to figure out where the strange voice she heard came from while listening to the single that she's supposed to perform later in the movie. After going into the actual mixing room and examining each sound level and turning them all off aside from one, which she almost didn't notice, she goes out and figures out how to play the message, revealing the device's true nature. So you mean to tell me the thing that we were told to ignore in the beginning of the movie was actually something that we shouldn't have been ignoring the entire time? That's like the most disappointing reveal from The Wizard of Oz ever, except instead of getting courage, a brain, and a heart, we get lisping Lisa, Whitehead Wally, getting carted off by the feds, so yay.
We found that subliminal messages work much better in movies.
Josie and the Pussycats is the best movie ever.
Lastly, product placement and advertising. You know how in most movies you can tell what something is, even when they try to hide the logo? They may put it in there occasionally just so you're like, okay, we get it. And they don't really make a big point of pushing it. This movie... You remember Yogurt from Spaceballs? What was his slogan?
Merchandising.
Merchandising? What's that?
Merchandising. Come, I'll show you.
Yeah, that went a little crazy when Yogurt showed Lone Star the shop of different movie-themed items, and the memes that keep pushing this online are still funny, largely because it's tied to the movie. I know with Josie and the Pussycats, the whole point of the movie is to prove that they can get teenagers to buy stuff, largely that they don't need, through propaganda and brainwashing, but with this, let's compare it to a water bottle with stickers on it. Most will have them spaced out well enough so you can see what they are and you can enjoy them. This, the only reason you know that the item is a water bottle is because it's still shaped like a water bottle. Well, at least you should know that. I can't think of another movie that pimped themselves out as hard as Josie and the Pussycats did. Basically, every popular brand known to man during that time period is here, like a step and repeat, plastered everywhere. Look at this. On the floor, on the walls, in the shower, you name it.
Oh my.
The only way this really would have been worse is if they dressed up Josie and the Pussycats like NASCAR drivers, with their logos all over their tracksuits, and wore them the entire movie. It's like the advertiser said, well, yeah, we'll help you pay for your movie, but we're going to have you put our logos everywhere. And I mean everywhere. Prepare to be violated. I think even Yogurt would be embarrassed by this. Well, maybe not. As stated previously, just a lot of fan service in here, mainly in the form of side boobs, bare back, and cleavage, and Alex doing his thing if you're into that. But there's no actual sex or full-on nudity, thank goodness. But the girls do have trouble for most of the film understanding the need for a bra and using sheer clothing. Obviously intentional to lure in the curious young boys, I assume. Then, the backdoor lover song implies gay sex, so there's that. Makes it odd that teen girls are going bananas over it, but if we're being honest, most boy bands have several to most of their songs leading to hooking up with chicks in one way or another. There's mild to moderate profanity, and when I was looking this up, turns out there's a PG version of this movie, so it strips most of that out, and maybe some of the fan service.
Oh, wow.
Alex pointed it out earlier in the movie, but to put it simpler,
Be yourself.
Drum roll, please.
That's your drum roll?
Josie and the Pussycats gets 2 stars. First off, it knows its target audience. As stated previously, you know you're not getting some deep thoughts here with this movie cover, especially if you're familiar with Tara Reid's line of work. Sorry, but if you know, you know. Next, source material. The film does pay tribute to the source material, but largely as a plea to enjoy that instead of this movie. It's like they took the material and instead of interpreting it in a different theme, like adjusting the pose or changing the setting, they went full Picasso and Cubism phase. You know, it's supposed to be a human, but everything's not where it should be. I feel like Vito Corleone.
Look how they massacred my boy.
Characters are present just for the sake of appeasing anyone familiar with the show or comic who got curious enough to watch it, and their hill to die on is, oh, if Alexandra isn't in there, I'm walking. Well, she's there, but at what cost? Next, too much advertising. I know I just hammered that to death, so I won't say anything beyond tone it down a bit, will ya? Lastly, the end credits. The credits start rolling with the best part of the movie, the blooper reel. Yeah, remember those? Those were so much fun! Yeah, they have an amped up version of the original theme music, which feels largely like another plea to go watch the source material instead of this. Well, that's all I've got, so until next time, bye-bye.